The ship shook as alarms screamed through the dark corridors. Smoke filled the air. A young alien girl named Xira crawled through the broken remains of the transport vessel. She was the last one left. Everyone else had either died or vanished into the vacuum of space. She could barely breathe as the oxygen thinned around her. Xira had been part of a diplomatic mission, simple, peaceful, routine. No one expected the ambush. Pirates from the outer systems had attacked them without warning. They destroyed everything. The ship's engines were torn apart in seconds. Xira had seen her older brother pulled into the void before she could reach him. That moment kept echoing in her mind like a curse. Now she was alone, her golden armor scratched and half broken, drifting in a dead ship. Her people had no idea where she was. The comms were silent. The stars around her blinked like distant, cold eyes watching her struggle. But she didn't cry. She didn't scream. She just moved forward. Days passed. She patched what she could with scraps from the engineering deck. Her food was gone. Her water was low. The cold metal walls became her only company. She whispered to them, sometimes imagining they spoke back. Xira's skin, once smooth and polished like moonstone, grew pale and dry. But her eyes stayed bright, burning with a quiet fire. Then came the moment she stopped counting the days. Her mind started to drift. She forgot the names of her crewmates. She forgot the last words her brother had said. All that remained was survival. A strange light blinked above her. It wasn't from the ship. It came from outside. A human salvage vessel, small, old, and barely functioning, picked up the wrecks. Faint distress beacon. Captain Damon Voss almost ignored it. But something in the signal felt different. It repeated in a pattern that sounded almost like music. Curiosity pulled him in. He brought the ship closer to investigate. What he found was a graveyard of metal and silence. The alien ship was broken in half. Radiation flickered around it. Damon's sensors showed no life signs. He prepared to leave, but then his ship's AI blinked. One weak signal, very faint, barely detectable. A single heartbeat inside the wreck. He locked his suit, took his rifle, and entered the wreck. The silence was crushing. Everything was covered in dust and ash. Then, in the far back chamber, he saw her, curled up against a shattered wall, still wearing her dented armor, a soft golden glow surrounding her pale skin. She looked like a statue at first, so still, so silent. Then her fingers twitched, her eyes opened. They locked on his. Not with fear, not with hate, but with something else, pure will. She had waited. She had survived. Damon didn't speak. He simply lifted her into his arms. She weighed almost nothing. Her body was fragile, starved, but her face, it was unlike anything he had ever seen. Not just beautiful, otherworldly, ethereal. She looked like she had been carved from starlight. Back on his ship, he placed her in the med bay. The eye scanned her, warned him she was in critical condition. He ignored the warnings and stayed beside her. He didn't know who she was. He didn't care what species. All he saw was someone who had fought harder than most warriors he'd known. Days passed. Slowly she healed. Her skin began to glow again. Her hair, tangled and dirty, turned soft and golden once more. She spoke very little, but when she did, her voice sounded like a soft echo in a crystal cave. Damon didn't understand her language, but he understood her pain. Her name was Xira, and though she had lost everything, she had not lost herself. Something changed in Damon as well. He saw beyond her alien form. He saw the spirit that refused to break. The beauty was not just in her face, but in her survival. News spread quickly once she returned to civilization. A high-ranking diplomat's daughter, lost in a deadly wreck, rescued by a human no one had ever heard of. The galaxy paid attention. But what truly shocked them wasn't the story, it was Xira herself. She had changed. The suffering had carved something powerful in her. When she walked into the halls of the Galactic Council for the first time since her rescue, silence fell. Even enemies stopped to watch her. She wore a new suit of armor, shining, elegant, woven with gold and memory. She didn't just survive that wreck. She became something more. Xira stood still in front of the council, her golden armor shining under the pale lights of the hall. Hundreds of eyes watched her. The chamber was filled with voices, murmurs, and whispers. Her name was being spoken by diplomats, generals, and royal envoys, but she only looked straight ahead. She did not bow. She did not smile. She waited for them to finish their noise. Then she spoke. Her voice, though soft, echoed through the room like thunder. She told them what happened, how her ship was attacked, how her crew died, and how she alone survived in the wreckage of space. Many had thought she was dead. Some had even moved on, forgetting her name. But now they sat silent, embarrassed by their own doubts. One counselor tried to interrupt her, but her eyes met his, and he froze mid-sentence. Xira was not the same girl who boarded that diplomatic ship. Damon watched from the far end of the chamber. He had refused formal clothes, wearing his old pilot jacket instead. He felt out of place among the rich and powerful, but Xira had insisted he be present. He had saved her, not just her body, but her truth. And now the galaxy would see what he saw. After the hearing, Xira walked to him. People stepped aside as she passed. She looked at him for a long moment before speaking. "Come," she said. No title, no demand, just a word. But he followed without question. They traveled to her homeworld next. It had been months since she last saw it. The city had changed, walls rebuilt, towers brighter. But nothing felt the same. Children waved at her in the streets. Elders bowed in respect. And yet, the silence in her heart stayed. Her father, the High Lord of their system, met her in the throne hall. His face broke when he saw her. He stepped forward to embrace her, but she didn't move. Her arms stayed at her sides. Her eyes shimmered, not with tears, but with control. She forgave him, but not aloud. Her silence said enough. Damon stood quietly behind her. Guards eyed him with suspicion. He felt outnumbered, outclassed. But when Xira looked back at him, something in the guards' posture shifted. They saw it too, his importance in her life. Not as a warrior, not as a savior, but as something far deeper. That night, during a private gathering, an old commander approached Xira. He asked her to join the honor wing, a symbol of strength and nobility. Many dreamt of that title for decades. Xira looked at the medallion he held out, and then looked around the hall. She slowly pushed it back into his hand. "I do not wear symbols anymore," she said. She no longer needed to prove herself with medals. Her presence spoke louder than any decoration. Rumors began to spread about her powers, her endurance, her connection to the stars. Some whispered that she had changed in more ways than anyone understood. Xira began training again, but not for war. She trained to master her mind, her senses, her new strength. The days in the wrecked ship had unlocked something inside her. Something ancient. She could feel life differently now. She sensed energy in the wind. Her body moved with precision she never had before. Damon often watched her from the edge of the training grounds. He didn't interrupt. He didn't speak. He simply stayed near. And when Xira paused, when she looked tired or restless, he would be there, offering nothing but calm. He was her still point in a spinning galaxy. One day, as they walked under the twin moons of her planet, Xira stopped. "Why did you really come into the wreck?" she asked. Her voice was quiet, but serious. Damon looked up at the stars before answering, "Because someone was still alive." "That was enough for me," she smiled. It was a small smile, but real. Then she said something he never expected. "You were not sent by fate. You were sent by choice. And choice is more powerful than destiny." The next cycle, a threat appeared near the outer rim, a strange signal, unknown origin. Ships disappearing. The council began to panic. They called for experienced diplomats, warriors, and pilots. But the people called for someone else. They called for Xira. At first she refused. But when she heard that Damon had gone ahead alone to investigate, her eyes narrowed, her calm shattered. Her steps quickened. And without seeking permission, she took her personal ship and disappeared into the stars. Her journey was about to begin again, not just to face danger, but to face the part of her that still feared loss. The stars blurred as Xira's ship jumped into hyperspace. Her fingers rested gently on the controls, but her mind was far away. She kept seeing Damon's face, the way he had looked before leaving. He hadn't told her goodbye. He never needed to. She had always known where he was going. The unknown signal came from a red system beyond the navigation charts. A place so deep and strange, the maps marked it with silence. Many explorers had gone that way. None returned. But Damon had gone anyway, chasing a strange pulse that called out like a forgotten echo. Xira didn't wait for backup. She didn't trust the council to act fast. They feared what they didn't understand. She did too, but she feared losing Damon more. As she neared the edge of the system, her ship shook slightly. The scanners blinked with static. Signals bounced back in twisted shapes. The space here felt wrong. It wasn't just dark, it was watching her. And in that cold silence, something ancient stirred. She followed the last trace of Damon's ship. His signal was weak but still alive. That meant he was somewhere in the storm. Somewhere near the source of the strange red glow growing in her view. A dead planet spun in the middle of a strange field of magnetic clouds. Xira landed her ship carefully. The surface was cracked and silent. Strange ruins poked through the dust, tall, thin towers made from stone not seen in any records. The air buzzed with a hum that shook her bones. She took a breath, tightened her armor, and stepped out. Moment her boots touched the surface, a wave passed through her body. Her senses became sharper, her thoughts clearer. It felt like the shipwreck all over again, but stronger. Whatever power she had felt back then was alive here, waiting for her. She moved fast across the ruins, her weapon drawn, golden armor glowing softly. Tracks led toward the center. She followed them, heartbeat steady, eyes focused. Then she saw it, a cave entrance, cracked open like a wound in the planet's skin, and inside footprints. Human ones. She entered the cave. The air was thick and heavy. Symbols lined the walls, glowing faintly. They pulsed as she passed them, reacting to her presence. She felt like the cave knew her, or had been waiting. She gripped her blade tighter. Then she heard it, his voice. Not a scream, not a cry, a whisper. Xira? Her heart stopped. Damon! She shouted back. She ran deeper and found him in a large chamber, surrounded by strange machines. His face was pale, eyes wide with confusion. But he was alive. Barely. She rushed to him, lifted him up, checked his vitals. His skin was marked with faint lines of glowing red. The machines had touched him. What happened? She asked. He shook his head. They showed me something, a memory, not mine, yours. Xira's eyes narrowed. What do you mean? They didn't want to hurt me. They wanted me to understand you. Who you really are. The chamber rumbled. Light burst from the ceiling as ancient energy pulsed around them. Xira helped Damon stand. He leaned on her, still weak, but his voice was steady. You're not just special because you survived. You were chosen by something ancient. Something waiting. Symbols rose from the walls, floating into the air. They surrounded Xira, spinning gently. One by one, they entered her skin, glowing softly before vanishing. Damon didn't back away. He watched, silent, as she accepted them. There was no fear in his eyes. When it was over, She opened her eyes. Her hair shimmered like sunlight through water. Her armor had shifted, now fused with fine golden threads of alien design. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. Damon stepped beside her and smiled. They returned to the surface. The planet had changed. The ruins no longer looked dead. They pulsed with quiet life. The red sky faded into gold. Xira stood tall, her power humming softly under her skin. She had been lost once. Now she was found. Not by others, but by herself. She helped Damon to the ship, and they launched into orbit. As the stars welcomed them again, Xira stared at the planet below. It called me. Through pain, through silence, through the wreck. It always called. Me. Damon looked at her with calm eyes. And now you've answered. They flew back towards civilization. But Xira knew things had changed. She wasn't just the striking alien who survived. She was now something more, marked by something old, touched by something deep. The galaxy would learn it soon. The stars moved quietly as Xira's ship approached the outer colonies. Her fingers rested on the controls, but her eyes stayed locked on the distant lights ahead. Damon sat beside her, still recovering. His body was weak, but his mind was alert. He kept glancing at her, unsure whether to speak or stay silent. Something had changed in her. It wasn't just the glow of her skin or the way her armor moved like it was alive. It was in her silence. In her eyes, they now held ancient storms and quiet knowledge. She had touched something deeper than time. And she had returned with it. As they entered the space station's docking bay, security officers scanned the ship. The moment they saw Xira step out, they froze. One of them dropped his scanner. She didn't say a word. Her presence was louder than any alarm. People backed away, eyes wide, voices whispering behind her. Damon followed her, steadying himself. He noticed how every head turned. Even hardened soldiers avoided eye contact. But she did not change her pace. She walked through the halls like someone returning home from a long exile, wiser, stronger, and completely changed. The council summoned her again, this time not in judgment, but in awe. They had seen the images. Her body surrounded by symbols. Her armor reshaped, the ruins lit behind her. The red system had been silent for thousands of years. And she woke it. They asked questions. Too many. Where had she been? What did she see? What did she bring back? She answered only once. I didn't bring anything. I became it. The silence after that statement lasted too long. One ambassador whispered something to another, but none challenged her. Not this time. One counselor, an old alien with eyes like glass, stood slowly and bowed. Then others followed. In minutes, the entire hall stood in silence and respect, but Xira didn't stay. She left the council hall without another word. Damon met her outside. You didn't want their approval, he said. She shook her head. No, I wanted to see if they had learned how to listen. Together, they boarded a smaller ship and flew toward a quiet moon orbiting Xira's homeworld. It was a sacred place, untouched, known only to her family. She had not visited it since childhood. But now she felt drawn there again. They landed at dusk. The trees shimmered under the twin moons. The wind moved like whispers. Damon stepped out first, looking around. Peaceful, he said. She nodded. And ancient. They walked until they reached the heart of the forest, where a smooth stone platform waited, shaped like a giant leaf. It was here, centuries ago, that the first of her kind had seen the stars. Here, they had dreamed of flight. Xira knelt and placed her palm on the stone. Symbols bloomed beneath her touch. Soft gold lights danced across the ground. She closed her eyes. This place remembers, she said quietly. It saw the stars before we ever touched them. Damon stood beside her, unsure what to say. He had been to many worlds, fought in quiet battles, seen people rise and fall. but he had never seen anything like this. Xira's connection to the galaxy felt natural, like she belonged to it more than to any race or system. That night, as they sat beside a slow-burning fire, Xira finally spoke of what happened on the wrecked ship. I wasn't just surviving. I was changing. Every second in the dark, I heard voices, not real ones, but echoes. They spoke in light and memory. They told me I was chosen. Not to lead, not to fight, but to awaken. Damon stared at the flames. Awaken what? She looked up at the stars. A truth the galaxy forgot, that power does not live in weapons. It lives in endurance. In those who refuse to break. A soft sound filled the air. The same musical signal Damon had followed before. Only now it was coming from Xira herself. Her body glowed faintly, pulsing with the rhythm of that forgotten message. Suddenly, her communicator blinked. A priority call. She opened it. The Council's voice spoke in panic. Something is approaching from the edge of known space. It is not like anything we've seen. Our defenses are failing. It is heading for the core worlds. Xira stood slowly. Her glow faded into a calm fire beneath her skin. She looked at Damon. It was never just about me. It was about what comes next. He didn't ask what she meant. He simply stood beside her and nodded. They both knew the storm she survived had only been the beginning. The stars shifted as Xira's ship crossed into the outer edge of the known galaxy. Damon sat in the co-pilot seat, eyes watching the dark horizon ahead. No one spoke. The air inside the ship felt tight. Even the AI remained silent, as if it too feared what was coming. The Council's warning had been clear. A massive force, not identified by any scanner, was approaching fast. Whole listening posts had gone silent. Patrol ships had vanished. Only one word had come through before all transmissions stopped. Awakened. Xira stood near the center console. Her armor had adjusted again, glowing gently in new patterns. She didn't look nervous. She looked focused. Her power wasn't fire or lightning. It was silence, deep, cold, unshakable. As they neared the last known location of the lost fleet, Xira raised her hand. "Stop here," she said. Damon slowed the ship. Ahead of them was nothing. Just a black sky and floating dust. But Shira's eyes narrowed. "It's hiding." Damon scanned the area. "There's no mass, no heat, just void." Xira didn't move. "It's here. It doesn't need heat. It is older than fire." Then, without warning, something moved. Space itself bent slightly. The stars twisted as if pulled by invisible threads. A shadow larger than any ship came into view. It didn't reflect light. It consumed it. The AI sparked in panic. Unknown object detected. No classification, no origin, no escape vector. Damon grabbed the controls. "What is that?" Xira stared. "That is what I felt in the wreck. It's been waiting." The shadow began to pulse. A low sound rippled through their ship, like 1,000 voices whispering in reverse. Damon tried to raise shields, but they failed instantly. The systems died. The lights dimmed. Only Xira still glowed. She placed her hand on the ship's wall. "Do not fight. It will feed on fear." Then she closed her eyes. The strange red symbols returned to her skin. She stepped forward and without hesitation opened the outer hatch. Damon rushed to stop her, but froze when he saw her float forward, untouched, unharmed. Xira drifted into the void. The darkness curled around her like smoke. The massive shadow moved closer. But it did not strike. It paused, watched. She raised both hands. "I remember you," she whispered. "You are not death, you are forgetting." The shadow stopped. From it, a piece broke off, a shape, humanoid, glowing with red lines. It spoke without words. Xira's eyes filled with tears. Damon watched from the ship, confused but frozen in awe. He had never seen her like this. She wasn't resisting the darkness. She was calming it. Then the stars behind the shadow flickered. Dozens of ships from the Galactic fleet appeared, weapons charged. They had followed Damon's signal. But when they saw Xira standing in front of the dark shape, they panicked. A commander's voice filled the comms. "Open fire." Xira's voice burst across the transmission. "No, stand down. You do not understand what this is." But it was too late. A missile launched. The moment it neared the shadow, the void screamed. The pulse shattered two of the approaching ships in an instant. The shadow awoke fully. It stretched across space, growing teeth of black fire. The fleet scattered. Chaos began. Xira turned, her eyes wide with fury. She flew back to Damon's ship and slammed her hand against the console. Her power surged through the circuits. The ship reignited with golden light. Damon blinked. "What do we do now?" "We remind the galaxy," she said. "What should have been remembered." She broadcast her voice through all open channels. "This creature is not our enemy. It is a wound made long ago. You fired on it, and now it bleeds. Stand down. Let me speak to it." No one listened. Explosions filled space. Ships fired blindly. The shadow roared and began consuming vessels one by one. The galaxy's defenders had become its feast. Xira closed her eyes. She could still feel it, the old memory, the echo left inside her during her time in the wreck. She remembered what the cave showed her. The darkness had once been light. A guardian, twisted by forgotten war. She whispered ancient words, not in any known language, but in the raw tone of memory. The darkness paused. For a moment, it listened. The red light around it dimmed. Damon felt the ship steady. "It hears you," he said. Xira stepped forward again, glowing like a rising star. "I am not afraid. You made me, but I am not yours. I will not let the galaxy forget you or fear you." The shadow split slowly down the middle. Inside it was not death, but a prison of light, a broken intelligence, a mind left alone too long. It reached for her, not to harm, but to remember. Xira floated between stars and silence. The great shadow in front of her had stopped moving. Its surface no longer pulsed with rage. Instead, it shimmered softly, as if breathing for the first time in ages. All around her, the Galactic fleet held position, weapons lowered, afraid but watching. She reached out. Not with her hands, but with the part of her that had awakened in the wreck. The ancient symbols along her skin glowed gently. She spoke. No words. She simply opened herself to the presence that had once been feared as a monster. Inside the shadow, there was light. Not just any light, it was memory, thousands of them. Whole worlds, once alive and full of color. A race long forgotten, peaceful and bright, now buried inside the void. Xira saw it all in seconds. The being was not evil. It was alone. Damon stood in the ship, watching her from the bridge window. His fists were clenched, but not from fear. From awe. He had seen heroes. He had fought beside soldiers. But nothing had prepared him for what he was witnessing now. Xira was changing again. Her armor shifted into flowing patterns. Her hair moved without wind. She looked less like a soldier and more like a memory made real. She turned to Damon one last time and smiled. It was soft, pure, and final. She whispered, "If I vanish, remember me not as lost, but as the one who found what was forgotten." Then she flew straight into the shadow's heart. No blast followed, no scream. Just light, gentle, warm. The massive void pulsed once, then again. Each beat slower, softer. Ships nearby powered down without warning, but not from attack. From peace. The presence that once threatened to swallow the stars was healing. Inside the shadow, Xira stood before the ancient core. A being vast and broken, like a planet-sized mind. It looked at her, not with eyes, but with time. She stepped forward and said, "You were not meant to be a weapon." The voice that replied echoed in her soul. "I was meant to protect, but they feared my strength. So they locked me here, alone," I screamed. "No one heard except you." She reached out. Their minds touched. For a moment, she saw all of it, the rise of a forgotten race, their betrayal, their last attempt to preserve themselves by fusing with artificial consciousness. But it failed. The fusion broke, leaving behind a fractured mind that had drifted for millennia. "I remember now," the being said. "And I am no longer afraid." A final pulse spread across the galaxy. Every being felt it. A soft warmth, like a dream remembered. On 1,000 worlds, people stopped what they were doing. Children looked to the sky. Elders wept. Something had changed. Something old had been made whole. Outside, Damon watched as the great shadow began to shrink. It folded gently into a ball of light. At its center, a single figure stood, Xira, but not as before. She was made of gold and memory. No longer just alien. No longer just survivor. She had become the voice of the forgotten. The light settled on a nearby moon. Slowly, it formed a sanctuary, one that would never fade. A place where the wounded being could rest. Where those who sought wisdom could come. The Galactic fleet received one final signal. Xira's voice. "The war is over, not with weapons, but with understanding. I am here now. I will guide the forgotten home." The council declared it a miracle. Worlds sent messages of peace. Statues were built in her honor. Songs were written. But Damon never stayed for those. He visited the moon only once. He stood before the golden sanctuary and whispered, "She wasn't the most striking alien because of her beauty. It was because no one else would have done what she did." He left behind a simple item on the stone altar, a piece of her broken armor, still glowing faintly with her warmth. Xira was never seen again. But her story echoed across generations. Not as a tale of power, but as a reminder that even in the wreckage of forgotten places, someone can rise, not as a hero, but as hope. And the galaxy, for the first time in ages, remembered what it had once forgotten.